The tariff inflation trick, how your groceries rose 15%. So Trump could give you a $2,000 check in 2024, you paid $4.50 for a dozen eggs. In 2025, after Trump's tariffs kicked in, those same eggs cost $5 trillion. That's not supply chain issues. That's not bird flu. That's a deliberate policy choice that made you poorer so the government could claim they're helping you. And here's the really ugly part. They gave you a $2,000 check and told you to feel grateful while they extracted $3,500 from your wallet through higher prices. Let me show you exactly how this trick works and why you're the mark in this con. There's a mechanism that's been running since January 2025 that most people completely misunderstand. Trump announced sweeping tariffs on imports from China, Mexico, Canada, and the EU. 25% on some goods, 10% on others, some products hitting 60% tariffs. The stated goal was to protect American manufacturing and bring jobs back. Sounds patriotic, right? Make America great, rebuild our industrial base, stop relying on foreign countries. Except that's not what happened. What actually happened is you started paying 15 to 25% more for almost everything you buy, while corporations pocketed record profits, and the administration sent you a check to make you think you came out ahead. You didn't. You got robbed. And I'm going to show you the exact math. Here's what tariffs actually are, because the word gets thrown around like it's complicated. It's not. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. When a company brings products into the United States from another country, they pay a percentage of that product's value to the US government. That's it. It's a tax. Now here's what politicians want you to believe. They want you to think that foreign countries pay tariffs, that China or Mexico writes a check to the US Treasury and American consumers don't feel any impact. Trump said this explicitly during his campaign. We're going to make China pay. But that's not how tariffs work, ever. The foreign country doesn't pay. The importing company pays the tariff to US Customs. And then that company does what every business does when their costs go up. They raise prices and pass the cost to you. Every single time. Without exception. Let me give you a concrete example. You buy coffee. Most coffee sold in America is imported from Colombia, Brazil, Vietnam. Let's say a pound of coffee beans costs the importer $4 before tariffs. Trump implements a 25% tariff on agricultural imports. Now that pound of coffee costs the importer $5. The importer doesn't eat that cost. They're not running a charity. They add $1 to the wholesale price. The retailer adds their markup. What was a $10 bag of coffee at the grocery store is now $12.50 or $13. You're paying $3 more per bag. Multiply that across everything you buy. Coffee, clothes, electronics, furniture, toys, car parts. The average American household spends about $60,000 per year on goods and services. Roughly 40% of consumer goods sold in America are imported. That's $24,000 of your annual spending on imported products. A 15% average tariff increase translates to $3,600 per year in higher costs for your household. $3,600. That's the real number. Your groceries, your clothes, your phone, your furniture, everything costs more. Not because of inflation in the traditional sense, but because the government imposed a tax and companies passed it through to you. But here's where the con gets sophisticated. In March 2025, the Trump administration announced a $2,000 direct payment to every American household making under $150,000 per year. They called it the Tariff Relief Rebate. The messaging was brilliant. We're standing up to China, protecting American workers, and we're giving you money back. Press conferences, social media posts, checks with Trump's signature arriving in mailboxes. People saw $2,000 hit their bank accounts and felt like they won. Except you didn't win. You lost $1,600. And that's just in year one. Because the $2,000 was a one-time payment, the tariff-driven price increases are permanent. Every year, you'll pay that extra $3,600, year after year. Forever, unless tariffs get repealed. You got $2,000 once. You're paying $3,600 annually. Over 10 years, that's $36,000 in higher costs versus $2,000 received. The math is brutal, and it's deliberately obscured. Now let's talk about who actually benefits from this scheme, because it's not American workers, and it's definitely not you. When tariffs get implemented, three groups of people make out like bandits: domestic corporations competing with imports, foreign companies who can now raise prices without losing market share, and the government collecting tariff revenue. Let me break down each one. First, domestic corporations. Let's say you're a US steel manufacturer. Before tariffs, you're competing with Chinese steel that costs $500 per ton. You produce steel for $600 per ton, so you're not competitive. Trump implements a 25% tariff on Chinese steel. Now Chinese steel costs $625 per ton after the tariff. You're still producing at $600, but instead of lowering your price to undercut the competition, you raise your price to $620. Why would you charge less when you can charge more and still be cheaper than imports? You just increased your profit margin by $20 per ton without improving efficiency or adding value. You're making more money simply because the government kneecapped your competition. US Steel, Nucor, Cleveland-Cliffs, all these companies reported record profits in Q1 2025 after the tariffs hit. Their stock prices surged, CEOs got massive bonuses, but they didn't hire significantly more workers. They didn't build new plants. They just raised prices and pocketed the difference. The tariffs didn't bring back manufacturing jobs. They increased corporate profits. Second, foreign companies. This is the part nobody talks about. Let's say you're a Chinese electronics manufacturer. You're selling phones to the US market for $400. Trump implements a 20% tariff. You now have to pay $80 to US customs, bringing your cost to $480. But here's the thing. You know American consumers are paying 15 to 25% more for everything now because tariffs hit across the board. So instead of just passing through the $80 tariff, you raise your price to $550. You're making an extra $70 per phone because the entire market repriced upward. The tariff gave you cover to increase margins. And American consumers can't tell the difference between tariff costs and pure profit-taking. It all looks like one big price increase. Chinese exporters, Mexican manufacturers, everyone exporting to the US made record profits in 2025 because tariffs provided perfect cover for price gouging. They blamed Trump's tariffs while jacking up prices beyond what the tariffs actually cost them. Third, the government. In fiscal year 2025, the US government collected $140 billion in tariff revenue. $140 billion, that's money extracted from consumers through higher prices but collected as government revenue. And here's what's sick about it. Tariffs are the most regressive form of taxation possible. A regressive tax is one that takes a larger percentage of income from poor people than from rich people. Sales taxes are regressive. Tariffs are even worse because they disproportionately hit goods that low and middle income people spend most of their money on. Food, clothes, household goods. If you're making $50,000 a year, you're spending maybe 70% of your income on consumer goods, many of which are imported. Tariffs just increased your cost of living by $2,500 to $3,000 per year. That's 5 to 6% of your total income. If you're making $500,000 a year, you're spending maybe 30% of your income on consumer goods. Tariffs cost you maybe $5,000 to $7,000 more per year, but that's only 1 to 1.5% of your income. The poor get destroyed, the rich barely notice. And the government collects $140 billion that they then use for the $2,000 rebate checks, while pocketing the remaining $70 billion for general spending. Let's do the math clearly. 70 million households received $2,000 checks. That's $140 billion in total payments. The government collected $140 billion in tariff revenue. They gave back exactly what they collected, but they didn't give it back evenly. Households that spend more on imported goods, typically lower and middle-income families, paid way more than $2,000 in tariff costs. Households that spend less, typically wealthy families, paid less than $2,000 in tariff costs, but still got the same $2,000 check. It's a reverse Robin Hood scheme. Take from the poor through hidden taxes, give a fixed amount back to everyone, and the rich come out ahead. The bottom 50% of households paid an average of $3,200 in tariff-driven price increases and got $2,000 back. Net loss, $1,200 per household. The top 20% of households paid an average of $1,500 in tariff-driven increases and got $2,000 back. Net gain, $500 per household. Wealth transfer from bottom to top, executed through tariff policy and rebate checks. And most people don't realize it happened because they saw $2,000 hit their account and thought they won. Now let's talk about the second-order effects, because the immediate price increases are just the beginning. Tariffs create ripple effects throughout the entire economy that make you poorer in ways you don't immediately see. These effects compound over time, and they're devastating if you're trying to build wealth or just stay afloat financially. First, tariffs trigger domestic inflation beyond just the imported goods. Here's how. When the cost of imported components goes up, every product that uses those components gets more expensive to make. Your car uses steel, aluminum, computer chips, all of which are either imported or made from imported materials. Tariffs on steel and aluminum from Canada and Mexico meant U.S. automakers' production costs went up 8 to 12% in 2025. They passed that cost to consumers. The average new car price went from $47,000 in late 2024 to $52,000 by mid-2025. That's $5,000 more. You might say, I'm not buying a new car, but used car prices follow new car prices. When new cars cost more, people hold on to used cars longer, reducing supply. Used car prices went up 18% in 2025. If you needed to replace your car, you just got hit with thousands in unexpected costs caused by tariff-driven inflation. Same thing with housing. Tariffs on Canadian lumber added 15% to the cost of building a home. Tariffs on Chinese appliances, fixtures, and materials added another 10 to 15%. The National Association of Home Builders estimated that tariffs added $30,000 to $40,000 to the cost of building a median new home in 2025. Builders passed that cost through. New home prices increased, which pushed up existing home prices because buyers compare new versus existing inventory. If you were saving for a down payment, the target just moved up $30,000 to $40,000. You got lapped again, just like with the Fed's money printing in 2020, but this time it's Trump's tariffs doing the damage. Second, tariffs kill jobs in industries that depend on imports. This is the part protectionists never talk about. Yes, tariffs might save some jobs in protected industries like steel manufacturing, but they destroy far more jobs in industries that use those materials. When steel prices go up 25% because of tariffs, every company that uses steel sees their costs spike. Auto manufacturers, construction companies, appliance makers, machinery producers. These companies either raise prices, losing customers and cutting jobs, or they absorb costs and cut jobs to maintain margins. A study from the Peterson Institute estimated that Trump's 2025 tariffs would result in a net loss of 400,000 jobs by 2026. Some jobs protected in steel and aluminum, but massive job losses in manufacturing, retail, and construction. And here's the kicker. The jobs that get saved are typically high-paying union jobs in legacy industries. The jobs that get killed are typically lower-paying service and retail jobs. So blue-collar workers in Ohio steel mills keep their jobs, but retail workers in Florida and Texas lose theirs because consumer spending collapsed under the weight of higher prices. The tariffs help a narrow group of politically connected industries while harming the broader economy. Third, tariffs invite retaliation. When the U.S. imposes tariffs, other countries retaliate with their own tariffs on U.S. exports. China implemented 30% tariffs on U.S. agricultural products in response to Trump's tariffs. American farmers got destroyed. Soybean exports to China dropped 60% in 2025. Corn and wheat exports fell 40%. Farm bankruptcies increased 35% year over year. And what did the government do? They announced a $15 billion farm bailout. That's taxpayer money going to farmers to compensate them for losses caused by tariff policy. You're paying for this bailout through taxes while also paying higher prices at the grocery store because of the tariffs. You're getting hit twice, once through higher consumer prices and again through taxes funding bailouts for industries harmed by the retaliation. The European Union retaliated with tariffs on US machinery, aircraft parts, and technology exports. Boeing saw orders from European airlines drop 25% in Q1 2025. They announced layoffs of 12,000 workers in Seattle and South Carolina. American tech companies that export software, hardware, and services to Europe faced new barriers. Apple, Microsoft, Google all reported revenue declines in European markets due to retaliation. These are high-paying jobs getting cut because of a trade war that was supposed to protect American workers. It's madness. The stated goal was jobs and prosperity. The actual result was job losses and declining living standards for ordinary people, while corporations and the government made out like bandits. Fourth, tariffs create monopolistic pricing power for domestic companies. When you eliminate foreign competition through tariffs, domestic companies can charge whatever they want. There's no pressure to innovate, improve quality, or lower prices. US steel companies didn't invest in better technology or efficiency after the tariffs. They just raised prices. US auto manufacturers didn't improve their cars, they raised prices. When you protect industries from competition, they become fat, lazy, and expensive. Consumers lose. Quality stagnates, prices rise, and the companies getting protected lobby politicians to maintain the tariffs forever. Because they're printing money. It's corruption disguised as economic policy. So what does all of this mean for you specifically? And what can you actually do about it? Because understanding the con is only useful if you can protect yourself from getting robbed again. Let me walk through the exact impact on your life and the strategies you need to survive this. If you're a median American household making $70,000 per year, here's what Trump's tariffs cost you in 2025. Your grocery bill went up $900 annually. Your clothing costs increased $400. Your electronics, appliances, and household goods cost $800 more. Your car-related expenses, whether buying, leasing, or maintaining a vehicle, went up $100. Housing costs, whether rent or mortgage payments for new purchases, increased by $200 annually for new households. Total impact, roughly $4,400 per year in additional costs. You got a $2,000 check. You're down $2,400 in year one. And remember, the check was one time. These costs are permanent and recurring every single year. Over 5 years, you're down $20,000 in purchasing power. Over 10 years, $42,000. That's real money. That's a down payment on a house. That's your kid's college fund. That's your retirement savings. Gone. Extracted through tariff policy designed to benefit corporations and the government at your expense. Now contrast that with someone who's wealthy. If you're making $500,000 a year, you might spend $120,000 on consumer goods annually, of which maybe 30% is imported. Tariffs cost you about $5,400 more per year. You got the same $2,000 check. You're down $3,400, which sounds worse in absolute terms, but it's less than 1% of your income. You barely notice. And here's the critical part. If you own stocks in US Steel, Boeing, General Motors, or any company that benefits from tariff protection or government contracts funded by tariff revenue, your investment portfolio went up significantly. The S&P 500 industrial sector gained 22% in 2025, largely driven by tariff-protected companies. If you have $500,000 in stocks with 30% in industrials, you gained $33,000 in portfolio value. You paid $3,400 more for goods, got a $2,000 check, and made $33,000 in the market. Net outcome, you're up $31,600. Meanwhile, the person making $70,000 with no stock portfolio paid $2,400 more and got nothing in return except financial stress. The wealth gap widened again. Just like the Fed's money printing in 2020. Different mechanism, same result. Here's what you need to understand. Tariff policy, just like monetary policy, is designed to benefit asset owners and harm wage earners. It's a wealth transfer mechanism. The people who designed this policy knew exactly what they were doing. They knew tariffs would raise prices. They knew the $2,000 checks wouldn't fully compensate lower-income households. They knew corporations would profit massively. They did it anyway because their priority is protecting corporate interests and wealthy campaign donors, not protecting your purchasing power. So what do? First, recognize that you cannot vote your way out of this. Both parties use tariffs when it's politically convenient. Biden kept most of Trump's 2018 tariffs in place and added new ones. Trump expanded them in 2025. This is bipartisan economic malpractice. Your vote might change who's in office, but it won't change the structural reality that the government uses trade policy to extract wealth from ordinary people. Second, protect yourself by becoming an asset owner. You cannot win this game by earning wages alone. Wages do not keep up with asset inflation or tariff-driven price increases. You need to own stocks, real estate, businesses, anything that appreciates or generates income beyond your labor. If you have $10,000 saved, invest it. Don't hold cash. Cash loses value. Assets gain value, especially in a tariff-protected economy where domestic companies have pricing power. Third, reduce your exposure to imported goods where possible. Buy used instead of new. Repair instead of replace. Learn skills that reduce dependence on consumer products. Grow some of your own food if possible. Cut subscriptions. Every dollar you don't spend is a dollar that doesn't get taxed through tariffs. Fourth, understand that this is going to get worse before it gets better. The tariffs implemented in 2025 are not the end. They're the beginning. As companies adapt, as supply chains shift, as retaliation escalates, prices will continue rising. The government will likely issue more rebate checks to maintain political support, but those checks will never fully compensate you for the cumulative costs. You're in a long-term wealth extraction cycle, and your only defense is financial literacy and asset accumulation. Fifth, spread this information. Most people don't understand tariffs. They see a $2,000 check and think the government helped them. They don't realize they're paying $4,000 more for goods. They don't connect the dots between trade policy and their declining living standards. Education is resistance. The more people understand how they're being robbed, the harder it becomes for politicians to run these cons. The tariff inflation trick is simple. Raise prices through policy, collect revenue, give back a fraction, and claim you're helping people while actually making them poorer. It worked in 2025, it'll work again unless people wise up. Your groceries rose 15%. You got a $2,000 check, you lost $2,400 minimum. That's the con. Don't fall for it twice.